All right, time to break out some virtualization for you. You'll be expected to know how to create a virtual machine for the 902 and to configure it correctly so it can interact with the network. And there will be different platforms in which you can use. I have an installation of Windows 10 Home Edition, which does not include Hyper-V Manager, the Microsoft virtualization product. If I had Windows 10 Ultimate, I would have had that. The differences between the platforms isn't all that great conceptually. They are pretty much the same. I will be using Oracle's VM VirtualBox. All right, and I have got this here. Let me delete that. That was a bad install. Move. Get rid of it. This is what VirtualBox will look like the first time you run it. And you can just Google VirtualBox Manager or Oracle VirtualBox. And you can download the version that's appropriate for your installation. You hit the New button. And right now we're carving out resources on the device, on our machine here, to dedicate to the virtual machine. I'm going to call this Windows 7. We can change the type of operating system. You can see Linux is there, Solaris, BSD, and others. We can also change the version, not just desktops, but also server operating systems. Windows 12 is in there. Windows 2008 is. And these are ways to configure the VirtualBox managing software in such a way so it's optimized for both the bit path that it's going to use, 32-bit or 64-bit, and also the operating system, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, and so forth. So we're going to leave it Windows 7, 64-bit, call the installation Windows 7, and that's it. Now we're allocating RAM. I am going to put in 2048. This is one of those moments where your mileage is going to vary. 2048 is 2 gigs. That's about half of the 4 gigs that I have in there. You have less than that, you're going to have less to allocate to the virtual machine. More is better. It might allow you to run multiple virtual machines on your desktop. Hit next. We're going to create the virtual hard drive. It's going to start off with a default size of 25 gigs. We're going to hit create. I'm not going to be using 25 gigs. That's overkill for our purposes. This is going to be the extension type, VDI. We'll leave it on the default there. Hit next. Keep it dynamically allocated as opposed to right now, 25 gig file that we're only going to be using a handful of megabytes. Hit next. Here I'm changing 25. I'll change it to 10. Still probably too much, but I got some stuff to work with. I got some space to work with here, and now I'm going to hit create. Even though I called it Windows 7, I'm still only carving out compute resources for the virtual machine at this point. There is no operating system. One thing I want to check before I get going here is the network settings. Oops. Click there. I'm not a fan of NAT, network address translation, on the desktop. It works better now. Earlier versions of virtual machines didn't handle that very well. You're basically treating the host desktop system as a router, and it will change the IP address from whatever VirtualBox will assign it to one that can get out onto the network. We're not going to use that. I am going to use a bridged adapter. And I've got my wireless there. Hit OK. That's what I recommend for you guys to use. So now we're going to start. Hit the start button here. And what it's doing right now is going to be starting up the sandbox that I created basically there. And it's going to look for a start of this. It's going to look for OS files, and it can't find any at this point. It did find something that I tried to install earlier. It was a Windows 8 installation. I don't want to do that. I want to do Windows 7. So I'm selecting my Windows 7 ISO image, and I'm hitting open. And I will hit start. And now it's reading that image as if it were a DVD. And it's loading things up into RAM. And now we're starting the Windows 7 installation process. You go to technet.microsoft.com, you download their latest desktop. What do I got here? I got an error. Let's see the details. Unable to allocate and lock memory. The virtual machine will be paused. Please close applications to free up memory or close the VM. I'm going to bet money that is because of the video that I'm making. If it is, I'm not going to be in a good place. Let's see if I can pause. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that worked. Happy day. Maximize this. So now I've got my Windows installation. I can change the language to install. No, I can't. Probably because this is an evaluation copy. Time and currency format. Can change that. Keyboard method. I can change there. Enter our language. We got everything set. Hit next. And install now. Now, this is going to be very different if you're used to installing Windows XP, Windows 2000, Windows 2003. There's a lot more automated in this process. You're not going to configure things. You're going to read the EULA, end user licensing agreement, set the licensing terms, hit next. At this point, you're not going to do an upgrade because you don't have a copy of an installation of Windows to upgrade. We're going to do this custom, advanced. It's found the disk. We only have one to offer it. We hit next. And now it's going to copy files and everything else it needs to do. The Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10 installation experience is much faster than previous versions of Windows. That was the point I was trying to make earlier. So I'm going to pause this. And when we come back, the installation will be complete. Okay, so that took a little while. Probably about 10-15 minutes. And now it is starting Windows. And we'll see how it goes from here. Updating registry settings. So to talk while we're waiting, one of the things we learned here is uh, something that I always try to drive home with all of my A+ students. When you get an error message like we got earlier when it couldn't run uh, the virtual machine, read the error message that pops up. It will tell you what the problem is. And with any luck, you'll be able to understand it and troubleshoot it. So do remember to do that. So now we're finishing the installation here. I think an installation at home of Windows 7 will probably run a little bit faster. I've got Camtasia running, which is the screen capture and audio capture program that I'm using to create this lesson. And so it's probably stealing a couple of cycles that would have been allocated to the installation uh, or to the virtual machine. Interesting links there. So I'll pause it again and come back to it when it's complete.